Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Yes, hello. Waiting for the music to stop. Thank you for good evening, good morning, good afternoon. We have many guests from all over the world actually here with us at the Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia and the Pacific. My name is Sue. I'm the program manager at the Asia Democracy Network, and I'll be taking you through today's program. Um, we have also Miss Sinsin. She will be giving the sign language interpretation for the whole duration of our assembly. Thank you for making time to join us in this assembly. In the Asia Democracy Network, have been working with youth since we, became an organization in 2013, and we really wanted to provide that space for Asian movements, youth movements, because there's so many youth movements all across the world and in Asia, especially. We see that happening now in Hong Kong, Thailand, Cambodia. And ADN really wanted to provide that space for youth to come together to discuss their strategies, their movements, and share each other's experiences. And we're hoping that at this assembly, we will get to those sharing. And I apologize if I'm kind of like out of it because it's 12 o'clock in the morning here. I'm currently in Chicago. So, but thank you all for making it here today. So I'll go ahead and kick off the event. We will start with some welcoming remarks from very, very special guests. We will first hear a video recording from Mr. Beka Ulung Hapsara. He's the commissioner of the Indonesia National Human Rights Commission, a co-organizer and sponsor to this assembly. So, Mr. Beka, I will leave it to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. I warmly welcome your delegation from many organizations and movements across Asia Pacific and everyone present to attend and participate virtually at the 2020 Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia Pacific. The commitment and action shown by youth on advocating human rights and democracy bring new spirit and hope, especially in the midst of pandemic. I hope everyone is safe and in a good health today. The 2020 Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia Pacific will be held in conjunction with the Indonesian Human Rights Festival 2020, hosted by the Indonesian National Commission on Human Rights, or Komnas HAM, Presidential Staff Office, and an International NGO Forum on Indonesian Development, and the local government of Banjarmasin City. This 7th Indonesian Human Rights Festival will be held under the theme of Upholding Human Rights During the COVID-19 Pandemic, Challenges and Solutions, which is a venture to address the shrinking civic space and declining democracy during the pandemic. The main theme of 2020 Asia Pacific Youth Assembly is enhanced solidarity to build democratic resilience against democracy regression and reclaiming civic space. Throughout history, youth have been stand up at the forefront of democracy defense in Indonesia. Youth also have played major roles in bringing political, social and economic change and driving the country forward. Globally, young people are marching, organizing and speaking out their views. They are marching for their right, for the future of peace, justice and equal opportunities. Youth around the world have been rising up against corruption, repression and injustice policy to fight any effort to weakening democracy. The situation for young people in Indonesia is as diverse, promising and complex. According to the National Census of 2010, There are 65 million young people in Indonesia, representing 28% of the total population. The World Bank and others have described a large number of young people as a demographic bonus. This is a situation that we need to utilize the idealism of youth and empower them to stand up for equal rights and fair treatment of everyone everywhere. We need to ensure that youth have the right to participate in decision making and have their voice heard. Most Indonesian youth are not yet aware of their basic rights and responsibility as citizens. They are also expressed skepticism about the role and importance of their participation. One major area of concern was their awareness and valuing of their right as a citizen to vote in election. This is still a need to increase awareness and provide critical information to build knowledge more broadly among young population regarding their role in politics and public service. I would like to say thank you to Asian Democratic Network for organizing this major event of youth in Asia Pacific region. I do hope that this spiritual youth assembly can be seen as a momentum to explore, learn, share our vision and spotlight the leadership role of youth in collective movement as a source of inspiration for a better future. One thing for sure is everyone needs to support and protect young people who are standing up for the human rights. You'll never walk alone. And the last thing, I thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Becca. We really want to thank the National Human Rights Commission of the Republic of Indonesia. They, with civil society, the government of Indonesia, and local government hold annually a human rights festival in Indonesia. And this is the 7th year. And they've been supporting that event, and they were very gracious to allow us to parallel that event and give us the space to hold the youth assembly. So we really want to extend our thanks and appreciation for their strong partnership. Next, I will have my boss, the Secretary General of the Asia Democracy Network, Ichal Supriyadi, to give us some welcome remarks. Ichal.
Test. Can you hear my voice? All right. I want to join the host to welcome you all to this assembly, an event that convenes the youths and movement leaders to share stories of different movements and consolidating potential youth strengths to build the citizen democratic resilience. I express my gratitude to the audience and speakers who spare their time, share and learn stories, and formulate what youth can do together in the coming future. On these two-day events, we will hear different national and regional leaders in Asia and the Pacific about their movement stories and then their struggles. We also honor to welcome the stories of the movement leader from Africa, which is from Nigeria, and then from Europe, which is Belarus, and Latin America, which is Chile. I think some of them just really early in the mornings, like in Africa and in Europe, as well as in Fiji, and in the Pacific, I think it's reaching 6 o'clock in the evening times. Thanks to the World Movement for Democracy for the cross-continents connections. I would say, undoubtedly, the youth and student movement have taken part in the history of the democracy and human rights movements worldwide. It is continuing to these days as we witness the youth braving themselves, came to the streets and giving the best fight to challenge the authorities and demanding change to the worsening democracy and human rights regressions. I always believe the youth is the future hopes to preserve democracy and human rights. The youth talk only the truth and the dream ideal. The youth act genuinely for the people. And then realizing that the Asia Democracy Network try to provide and bring others to reorganizing before they return back to their struggle. But I hope after this event, after this meeting, story listenings and consolidatings, all the youths in Asia or including in Pacific as well as in other continents, they will come back and return to the fights. But this time you are not single movements, but you need to turn this to be a wave of youth power that able to share and support each other between countries and even between continents range. This is the time, I believe, to ring the bell and tell the world if they are not alone. So I guess thanks to everyone for being here today. And then let us inspire each other. And then let us build strong solidarity with whatever we can to push back regressions and to reclaim our space. And that can only happen if we are all unite. Enjoy these 2 days meetings, and I hope we can continue conversations bilaterally or multilaterally or out of this formal webinar meetings or conference in solidarity. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for highlighting the importance of being united in this front to fight back on the regression of democracy. And I'm sure everyone will agree with me. We are seeing this regression not only in Asia, but all over across the globe, which leads me to the next session, which I'm very excited about. We have leaders from all over the globe, as Ichar mentioned, from Africa, from Latin America, from Europe, to share with us the movement. Asia has seen a very rich student movement, youth movement in the past couple of years. And we know the same phenomena is happening in other parts of the world. And I think this is a very good opportunity for all of us to hear what's going on and share our experiences and try to find commonalities. So in this session, we will hear from them on their democracy and human rights struggles and how they are shaping the movement and keeping the movement alive in amidst the challenges. And through their experience, we want to highlight the strategy to inspire the youth in the Asia Pacific and also everyone else in the globe. First, I will have Miss Elisa Wahid. She sent us a inspirational speech video. Miss Elisa Wahid is a trained family psychologist, but is most recognized for her work in the social sector on multiculturalism, democracy, and human rights, and moderate Muslim movements in Indonesia. And Elisa Wahid's quest for a pluralistic society led her to found Gus Durian Network in Indonesia. So we will hear from Elisa.
Greeting from Yogyakarta. I am Alisa Wahid from Gus Durian Network Indonesia. And it's a pleasure for me to join you all in the 2020 Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you, Asia Democracy Network, INFIT, Komnas HAM, and organizers for inviting me to share with you my thoughts on youth and democratic resilience. It is always a pleasure for me to work with youth leaders, especially youth leaders in difficult but fundamental workspace that is democracy and human rights. I remember in 1980s and 1990s, I watched the regimes in many places of the world crumbled. I remember in 1997, I accompanied my father to attend Forum 2000. This is a big conference attended by world leaders and thinkers. And at the time, I listened to President Václav Havel of the Czech Republic, the host of the event, and then also President de Klerk of South Africa, who had just abolished apartheid. And there were also German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, who were just led Germany, unifying Germany after the fall of the Berlin Wall. I listened to them talking about the future of civilization with other leaders and thinkers such as Prince Hassan bin Talal of Jordan, Elie Wiesel, Dalai Lama, and of course, my father, who later on became the first democratically elected president of Indonesia. And the world has changed so much after that event. Well, the world is always ever changing. Countries and states change. There used to be Yugoslavia and Uni Soviet on the global map, and now we don't have them. There was no Timor-Leste on the global map. Now we have them next to Indonesia. There was no information technology, and now we have them as one of the most powerful tools of politics, both for the best and the worst of agendas and intentions. And if we look closely, we would see that in all of these great scale changes, the footprints of the youth movement were clear, as it should be. As my father used to say, youth activists and youth leaders are the bridge between people's current reality and future ideal reality that we envision. Youth leaders and youth movement, you are the bridge. And I believe another wave of change would happen soon. We have seen a decline of democracy in many parts of the world. Democratic principles are abandoned, oligarchs arise, civic spaces diminish, human rights activists face more and more intimidation and restriction. And worst of all, the fundamental freedoms of the people are now in jeopardy. And to make matters more complicated, or maybe for that matter, we are now facing many challenges in democracy brought about by advancements of information technology. Hoax, fake news, fire hose of the falsehood, polarizations, algorithms. Those are the things that we are facing today, and this is a new territory that can only be answered by the youth of today. We, the older generations, have no ideas how to capitalize the information technology to the betterment of society. For that, we need the youth to step up. We need youth to lead us in managing the great changes that is emerging. And my mentor, Professor Otto Scharmer, he likes to say that in every change, great change that is happening, there would be something dying and there would be another thing emerging, waiting for us to nurture, to cultivate, so that we can harvest. This has always been the process of change, and that is always the challenge in managing the change. Professor David Alcott from New York University, he said that for an effective social change to happen, we need four ingredients. The first one is pressure for change. Then we need a clear and shared vision. We need capacity for change. And the last one, we need actionable first steps. Those four elements have to be present for us to effect a great change, a complex change, a systemic change. Without the pressure for change, people would not move. Without the clear shared vision, we would be lost. We would not be reaching the destination that we seek. Without the capacity for change, all we have is only passion and idealism. And without actionable first steps, all this energy, all this passion, all these ideals would lead us to nothing. These four elements should be worked on, should be cultivated, should be strengthened for us to find the change that we are needing for our civilization today. And I do believe that this youth assembly would bring you all, the youth leaders from across Asia and the Pacific, to actually have the equipment, have the solidarity, have the conceptual framework that you need to lead us all in the fight. I hope that this youth assembly would give you a holding space, cognitive arenas to learn from one another, to gain strength from each other, to work together, to consolidate the movement so that we would reach our destinations. I would end my sharing by quoting my beloved guru, President Abdurrahman Wahid, or who we fondly call Gustur. Gustur said, in real life and in our challenging struggles, we are not mythical creatures and superhumans who have no fear and full of heroic fairy tales. As ordinary human beings with loved ones, with families, we have fear. But even though we are fearful, we continue to fight. We forge ahead. We are brave enough to jump over the fence of our fears. Maybe that is when and where we determine our dignity and value as a person. I wish you all the best for the struggles and the fights that you are taking right now. And Godspeed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa, for sending your remarks to us and the courage to continue the fight. Just want to remind everyone we are live on YouTube at the Asia Democracy Network's YouTube channel, and we're also live on our Facebook page. So please tell all your friends to watch. Now we will go ahead and listen to some very fascinating youth from all over the world. First, we'll go to Latin America. We have Margarita Mayra Serrano from the Ojora Nos Toca Participar, based in Chile. Margarita is a advocacy coordinator and It's Our Turn to Participate, a civil society initiative to promote citizen participation in Chile's constitutional process. She has 7 years experience working to strengthen democracies from the social and public sectors in the areas of strategic communications, citizen engagement, agile methodologies, and political advocacy. She's a former World Movement for Democracy Hereford Youth Fellow. Margarita, I will give you the floor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Margarita Mayra. I am here in Chile, very far from you guys, and they have asked me to share my story with you. So let me tell you about last year when in October 2019, Chile exploded, as we say, or Chile woke up, we also say. We had massive demonstrations for months and all over the country until the pandemic forced us to stay home. The demands were very varied, but there was one common factor that was that we needed a country that takes better care of its people. Here, education, pensions, the health system, they don't work well. They're very deficient. And these are major concerns, and citizens needed to let that know. That's why we went out to the streets. There's a feeling here, because all these things don't work well, that politicians only govern considering their personal interests and not think of what is best for the country. There is some truth in this, unfortunately. So people are very disenchanted with the political system in general. This was only made worse by the brutal repression to the demonstrations in the streets. We saw violation of human rights every day. Many people lost eyes because of the rubber bullets police threw at them. So if people were angry at the beginning of these demonstrations, they were really furious as the days went by. Even so, it was politicians who found a way out, or what we hope is the way out, a democratic way out of all this. All political parties, or most from right and left, came together and reached a national agreement to change the constitution here in Chile. And this made sense because the current constitution here in my country was drafted during Pinochet's dictatorship. And it was made to maintain a system that does not benefit everyone. So whenever there is an attempt to change things, all these demands people have, whenever they try to see the light as public policies, they are impeded. There's this barrier that is the constitution, and it goes to the constitutional court, and then, well, anyway, changes just don't happen. So if we wanted to make structural changes, we need to change the constitution, and it made sense for them to propose that. And we've just had a national plebiscite a month ago, a bit over a month ago, where 78 of the country agreed that they wanted to change the constitution. So it was a huge triumph against Pinochet's dictatorship and his constitution, which is his biggest legacy. But let me go back to last year. So in this context, with massive demonstrations, people were really angry, really frustrated, and the brutal repression I already mentioned, many people from civil society organizations came together to think what we could contribute to this historical moment and how we could make something happen to help the process find a peaceful solution, a democratic solution. So after many brainstorming sessions, the project I work on now was born. And this project is called It's Our Turn to Participate. Ahora nos toca participar in Spanish. And this project, what we do through it and what it aims at is to promote citizen participation and social cohesion and the inclusion of marginalized groups and all the regions in my country in this historical process. So what we do is we try to raise the voices of those who have been historically excluded in these past decades. It's already been 3 decades since we've been back to democracy, but people have constantly felt excluded from decision-making processes. So if we want to make structural changes, we need to start correcting the things we did wrong as a country all this time. And the first thing to change is to make people feel included in what is going on in our nation, in our political decisions as a country. So what we do is we actively go reach out to women, youth, the elderly, the disabled, migrants, refugees, people in prisons, the LGBTB communities, the indigenous peoples. We want all of them to be a part of this political process where we are going to draft a new constitution as a country. And we want to do it working with people from all 16 regions in my country, because this is a very centralized country where all the decisions are made in Santiago, the capital. So the way we work is we articulate organizations, civil society organizations from all over the country. We have 16 regional councils, 1 in each region in my country. And all in all, we have over 250 organizations working together in this platform that is It's Our Turn to Participate. So we spent almost over 6 months teaching people in workshops what the Constitution is about and why it is important, so that people could vote informed in the plebiscite, where we would decide as a country if we wanted a new constitution or not. And we are now organizing dialogues all over the country for these groups and the regions to design proposals for what they want in the new constitution. And we will take these proposals to the candidates, to the convention, so that people who are running to be a part of those who will draft the new constitution, they have an idea of what all the rest of the country, and especially those groups that have been historically excluded, what they want in the constitution. Personally, I've had the role of advocacy coordinator in this project since March. So I've dedicated my time to work with public institutions and convincing authorities of the importance of participation and inclusion, so that we will have broad participation. For the plebiscite specifically, I coordinated efforts with many organizations to create a list of inclusive measures that would address the needs of these historically marginalized groups and raise the chances that they would actually go out and vote, considering also that there's a pandemic out there. We also pushed for the creation of a space where civil society organizations could contribute with our point of view to the adaptations that the Electoral Service would be making to the plebiscite because of the pandemic. We thought it would be good to have this sector, which people tend to trust, being a part of that discussion. And as a result, a consultative commission was established. We were very proud of that when it happened. And in that place, in that commission, I had the chance to officially present these inclusive measures we had put together with the organizations to make a more inclusive plebiscite. And some of them were taken into account. I am really proud to say that we provided poll workers with the first anti-discrimination training in the history of elections in Chile. And this is just the one first step of the many things we think we can do. So things are starting to change as a country. Baby steps, but still. Our main goal ahead now that we decided we will be having a new constitution And we will be electing our representatives in April next year for the convention. What we need now, which I will be working for, is to have citizen participation mechanisms in the Constitutional Convention. So as it is today, the convention next year has no way of establishing any kind of official dialogue with the people out there in my country. And this is very necessary so that people feel that this process belongs to them, so that they can appropriate to this new constitution that we will be creating as a country. For this, we have joined forces with other initiatives and organizations here in Chile. And we have just founded, from It's Our Turn to Participate, we have founded a network for participation, that's its name, with civil society organizations to push for this, which will not be easy, but it's so important to have all these groups and territories be a part of the constitutional debate next year. I believe in what we are doing. A new constitution that does not take into account all the groups in the country runs the risk of not being seen as legitimate by the citizens. If we want a stable change that lasts in time, we have the duty to include all the groups in my country. This way, we will all be the true protagonists of this moment, and we will feel that we own this, that we are a part of history. So we will feel that not only Chile has a new constitution, but that this is finally our constitution, which we all will have worked for to create it. And isn't that a wonderful thing to have in a country with such social unrest? So this is what we are working for, and we hope to see that happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margarita. That was actually a video that she sent to us. It really seemed like she was here with us live. But it's really fascinating to hear how Margarita and her organization and the youth in Chile has really engaged the political process to be inclusive. And if you look at across the region or across the globe, established democracies, developing democracies, all struggle with how do you involve youth, how do you involve marginalized communities to be more actively engaged in the political process, and also how do we make sure that the political process is open for them to engage. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think we have a lot to learn from, and hopefully we could take your experiences and try to see how we could adapt that across Asia. Next, we will go to Belarus. We have Daria Minsky from The Village magazine here to speak to us today. And let me pull up her. She's the media manager and entrepreneur and founder of the leading media outlets, kyky.org and The Village Belarus, as well as Political Media Reformation. After the crackdown on Belarusian independent media and the arrest of the other Mint Media's co-founder, she moved her editorial teams abroad. It co-founded an organization to support independent journalists and Telegram channels. Thank you so much, Daria, for joining us on such early morning, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Hello from Madrid, Spain. Yes, very early. Hello from the dark. So yeah, my name is Daria. I am from Minsk, originally from Belarus. Yeah, and as you mentioned, I co-founded a couple of lifestyle and social political outlets. First, I would like to give you a little bit of context why Belarus is not a democratic country. So Alexander Lukashenko was democratically actually elected in 1994. And he's been the president for more than 26 years. And right now he's a persona non grata in the European Union, the US, and many other countries. for human rights violations and kidnapping of political opponents and constant abuse of power. So this year we had presidential elections on the 9th of August. And Lukashenko again declared himself a president by 80%. And, you know, after 26 years, it caused countrywide protests and an unseen wave of solidarity. Right now, peaceful protesters are facing unprecedented repressions, and the whole Belarusian society, like it's been 4 months already, like of constant protests. So far, many politicians, like main leaders of the opposition movement, activists, journalists, are they're being abducted, thrown in jail without any charges, tortured, and some protesters were killed. There were around 10 people already. So right now, people are forced to flee the country and they live in it en masse. And here's a little bit of personal story. At the end of August, my business partner got arrested and we had to evacuate all our editorial teams in one night to the neighboring countries, to Kyiv, to Lithuania, to Poland, because the presence of journalists on the ground who use their real names and legal entities and bank accounts make them a very easy target for authoritarian regimes. So basically the government paralyzed all our business activities, leaving us without any legal vehicle and income. And actually what I'm doing right now is I'm constantly buying new domains because they block one domain and like we move to another. So our content would be actually available for our readers in Belarus. And that's very funny. So we actually organized the whole donation campaign for buying new domains. And I'm trying to be creative with that. I'm buying the funniest, so the audience could be a little bit entertained. But what I would like to talk about is how Belarusian movement actually turned into a Telegram revolution. Telegram is a messenger app, and like who would expect that Telegram would be such a revolution media for us. So let me tell you about this. So when all this blocking happened and the revolutionary events, we observed the explosive popularity of Telegram channels. And the nature of these channels, they're more like content aggregators rather than content creators. Well, even if you could put public founders in jail, other moderators, they would remain scattered around Europe, and only a few people would know their real names. So basically they collect information from regular users, from stringers, who send in their contact through Telegram bots. And you can't block it. You cannot make it stop by putting anyone in prison. It will continue to deliver news no matter what. And the only measure that can be taken is complete shutdown of the internet, which the government actually did many times. But on a permanent basis, this is too much, even for such a dictator as Lukashenko. So yeah, it's a Telegram revolution. But if you ask, well, why not Twitter? Why not Facebook or any other social media? Well, in my opinion, there's several factors for this. First, and the main factor is the resistance to blocking attempts and active improvement in this domain by the Telegram team. Maybe some of you know that there were previous attempts to block Telegram in Russia and they were unsuccessful. So Telegram is really resistant. Also, the important factor is Telegram allows you to stay anonymous within the app. You can use your nickname, unlike Facebook. Facebook requires some sort of ID to prove your identity. Also, Telegram allows you to hide your phone number, unlike other messengers like WhatsApp or Viber. And it has a very, very minimalistic RSS-like newsfeed, very, very easy to manage and follow. And I would say that another factor is the founder of Telegram, Pavel Durov, which has a very rebellious personality, and he's a genuine supporter of Belarusian protesters. And a very, very cute detail is that they actually changed the official flag to the one of the protesting movement, and that was a very inspirational moment for Belarusian protesting movement. So if we talk about numbers, before all these events, Belarusian Telegram had a relatively low amount of subscribers in comparison to standard online media. For example, in July, before the elections, Nechta, which is the main opposition channel, had around 3 million views per month in comparison to the main news website, Tudbai, with 90 million visits per month. But the events of August, they were a tipping point, and most of the Telegram channels who provided user-generated content, meaning almost immediate transmission of users' content to the news feeds, they experienced exponential growth. And that was very, very convenient for people to send their photos and video materials through Telegram bots. So the channels basically became the aggregators, processing hundreds of messages per day. And obviously, no traditional media would be able to do that at such pace. Just think about that. In August, there were 1.5 billion views of Nechta posts. Even after 3 months after, the amount of views is more than twice as big as the main news media, like traditional media, Tudbai. This is extremely impressive. So basically, Telegram became the standard for every media in Belarus. But of course, there are minuses of such delivery. Obviously, Telegram channels were created mainly by bloggers. Many of them are not professional journalists. And most of them, talking about youth, they're really, really young. For example, Nechta, the main guy who's basically coordinating the revolution, is just 22 years old. Yeah, this is fascinating. So many of them are students with no journalistic experience at all. And the result of this is they're poorly fact-checked, misinforming materials. For example, there was a notorious case when the detained people falsely accused one former police employee of torture. So she received many death threats, and she had to go public about the whole situation and prove that she has nothing to do with the woman who actually tortured protesters in a detention center. But anyway, there's no doubt that Telegram turned into the main protestant media and content distribution channel. There were some lessons learned, obviously, and there are less fake news than at the very beginning. But the problem itself is that content still reaches only 20% of the population. And also, Nechta was called recently terroristic channel, and they experienced a pretty sharp decline in subscribers. So it's a sensitive problem for the protesting movement. So our goal right now is not only to maintain the existing amount of subscribers for Telegram channels, but also to break through this 20% ceiling. If we talk about e-democracy, which is another domain of my interest. So basically, the total distrust of any official institution triggered not only migration of media into alternative channels like Telegram, but also a creation of parallel decentralized state. And the most impressive project, in my opinion, is called Voice. Voice is a voting platform whose goal is to reveal the scale of falsifications by Lukashenko's government. And on the election day, 1.5 million in total voted on this platform. I must say there were experiments with direct e-democracy before in different countries, but these numbers are unprecedented for any e-democracy platform. It's basically like a democracy training on steroids. And it's a unique case triggered by a complete failure of the state and the whole legal system. So for the first time, people could have material proof that their voices have been stolen. And this knowledge actually gave a boost to the protesting movement, and that we actually observing right now. And on the macro level, the results obtained through Voice represented the clear evidence of fraud for European Union, for the US, and for the whole world. And there was like a key factor in imposing sanctions on Lukashenko's regime. So Voice actually doesn't belong to any political party or presidential candidate. It is trusted by most people, no matter what their political candidate is. And again, like this is an unprecedented experiment with electronic democracy for the whole world. In my opinion, Belarus is an ideal place to conduct such experiments. It's a mono-ethnic, secular society, mostly urban, with a very high human development index. So if we talk about direct democracy, size matters as well. Belarus, unlike Russia, has more chances to successfully adopt this model and maintain it. If we take the Arab Spring as an example, Tunisia, for example, with 11 million people, almost the same population as Belarus, was relatively successful in maintaining the results of democratic revolution, unlike Egypt, with almost 100 million people that in fact failed to adopt this democratic institutions. So if we talk about future plans and the image of a new Belarus after the transition of power, the Voice founders' final goal is to become a part of the electronic government and to foster dialogue between the civil society and political decision makers, as well as to conduct referendums and local surveys using those principles of electronic democracy. And the team is like permanently releasing new projects, and the last project was Digital Solidarity, which is basically a platform for peer-to-peer crypto transactions, which aim is to help repressed people and to sell services and goods, basically bypassing all taxes and charges. So for all industries, like from media to business and like social institutions, we created like all these parallel organizations. This is beautiful in my opinion. So just to conclude, if we talk about future scenarios, like how this product is going to be developing, because it's still on, like we're still in this right now. So at this point, it's very hard to predict anything. And we generally thought that it would take like around 1 month to finish the whole revolution, but unfortunately, it turned to be a long story. Yeah, so right now, all the main opposition actors are trying to build an infrastructure around the actual president-elect, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who is in exile in Lithuania and has her headquarters in Vilnius. And yeah, there are basically three main work directions: the third sector, all kind of civic work, the human rights defender work, and ours, which is the media and street protests. So our goal is to build infrastructure to be ready for the transition of power in every aspect. So although we are officially sort of affiliated with the Tikhanovskaya office, all these foundations, they exist in parallel and acting independently, but everyone has the same goal. So these foundations, they don't serve the headquarters, but act in coordination with the council. So among our teammates, there is a consensus that the eventual transition of power is unavoidable. And the key question is how many people will suffer and go through the repressive machine before it happens. But from our part, from the media sector, we will make sure that all resources, our websites and all our media and Telegram channels keep working, and all new media initiatives are financially supported and promoted within our distribution channels. Живе Belarus. Thank you for listening. This is it from my part.
Thank you so much for that fascinating talk. I mean, you hit upon a lot of very interesting things. When you first talked about Telegram and how these new technologies are helping mobilization all across social movements, but at the same time, how that could actually harm the movement with fake news and disinformation, misinformation, and how that is also connected to, this idea of new technology and e-democracy, especially during a pandemic. I think a lot of governments around the world are trying to see how e-democracy can be applied. And that's such a new, very new area. And to hear that Belarus is exploring that's very fascinating. And then I heard that in Belarus you're already going into the 128th day of protests. People are still protesting as we speak. They're trying to they're gathering in masses, but because of the crackdowns, it's being dispersed to have smaller movements. And that's always a fascinating phenomena to see for us in the Asia region, and also extending our solidarity to Belarus. Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we will go, and also before we go, I just want to tell the audience, if you have any questions, please, feel free to use the Q&A button on your platform to ask us any questions. And for those of you who are watching through Facebook Live or YouTube, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, you could email us at adn@adnasia.org. Next, we have Laksiyayog from the Center for the Study of Regional Development from New Delhi, India. He's a doctoral student in the School of Social Sciences at Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. He's a geographer by training, holds an MA in geography with a specialization in regional development and planning. Before he started his doctorate, he was working as a junior research fellow at the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Since 2012, he has been working with youth on the issues of environment and sustainability in Delhi. Currently, he as a Youth and Democracy Fellow with the Participatory Research in Asia. Based in India, he is engaged in the conversations regarding practicing and promoting democracy in everyday life. Thank you. I will give you the floor.
Hello. Am I audible? Thanks, Sue, for the introduction, and I would like to thank the Asia Democracy Network for inviting me to speak at this platform. I have a small presentation, so I'll just share the screen and start it. Uh, I'm not able to share my presentation actually. So can you help me out with that?
I think, can you try now? Will it work? Does it?
Yeah, now I can do. Thank you. I hope the PPT, the presentation is visible on the screen.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So first, I would like to, to thank again the Asia Democracy Network for inviting me to speak in the Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia Pacific 2020. It was indeed a pleasure listening to other participants and speakers for their inspirational and powerful stories from other parts of the world, such as places from Belarus and also from Chile. So as Sue mentioned, I'm Laksh and I'm currently a doctoral student at JNU, New Delhi, and also a Youth in Democracy fellow at Participate Research in Asia. So I'm here. I have been asked to share the story from India regarding the issues of democracy and participation from the perspective of youth. Uh, and it's a great responsibility on my shoulders. India is 1.38 billion numbers as population, and it would be impossible for me to share the stories from all across parts of India. So what I will be doing is sharing two stories at least to uh, to uh, to show you that how India, in particular, have been cracking down on student voices, in particular on youth voices, and how youth have been able to resist such attempts, have been able to build solidarities across caste, class, region, gender, and other dimensions. And I will be also talking uh, about how and why such issues have came up in India. So a bit context to that. As you can see on my screen, I have titled my presentation as Reclaiming Democracy Within and Beyond the University Space. And the image which you can see has one of the defining images, has been one of the defining images of the recent protest which shook the country which started in December 2019 last year. And one of the peculiar thing about these protests, which were a response to the recently passed Citizenship Amendment Bill 2019 in the Parliament, has been the participation of women youth leaders, and you can see three women leaders and who are youth have become the face of this movement from starting. This image was constantly shared on Twitter and other media documents, including the international media outlets such as BBC and others. And I would be focusing on two movements which was made famous by Feast Must Fall, which already know have a reference to African context also, which was used by the students of my university by fighting for our rights while fighting for our rights to decrease the fees which have been raised by the university in the month of October last year, 2019, and also the anti-CA protest, which was a feature all across India. So this was this was this was one of the initial day when the protest took out. The month was December 2019 last year, when the current BJP government, the Bharatiya Janata Party government, which is the ruling government in India right now, came to power again after completing its 5-year term. And since it came into power in May 2019, it has been trying to push a major demand, a major requirement, which it had put it on the election manifesto, which was amending the Citizenship Act of 1955, which grants citizenship to the citizens of India. And it happened so that India has been a secular country. The rights which have been given to citizens does not discriminate on the basis of religion, caste, class, gender. But for the first time, very first time in the history of India, the Citizenship Act was amended, and citizenship was supposed to be given to, as they written, prosecuted minorities from the countries of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh, uh, the people belonging to all religions except Muslims. So it resulted in a major protest in India, because it was the first time when we were when it was written in the constitution language, that now religion will also become a basis of giving citizenship or defining citizenship of India. And the protest which came up, photo you can see was one of the major protests which happened in the university in India, which is one of the central universities in India. The name is Jamia Millia Islamia. The students came onto the street protesting that such an attempt actually undermines the Constitution of India, and the basis on which this citizenship is granted is religion cannot be accepted at all. The protest, which again expanded into other parts of the country. And then you can see here students, and as expected, the majoritarian government, which we are having right now, started to crack down on the heavily crack down on the students movement and students protest which were taking place. It is also important to note that Jamia Islamia happens to be one of the minority institute which has been enshrined in its act. So it's a university which is supposed to give space to minority voices, especially Muslims in India. So it was the protest received a very heavy crackdown from the government side. This is one of the 14 which many students were injured, and it happens to be just a coincidence that it was December 15th last year when police entered the campus, and major tear gas was fired onto students. The police also entered the library, and later on the news came from the proctor, from the officials, that permission was not given to the police to enter the campus. It was completely a violation of the academic space which was given, and in response to that, you can see that many of the students were detained by the police personnel in Delhi. And you can see that in response to such protests, which is also happening across India due to CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Bill 2019, it spread all across India. The maps, which is being shown on the left side, shows the different locations onto which protests were observed, and the list shows that major universities, including Indian Institute of Technology, which have never been in news due to protests, were part of this. They all came together. Mainly students, young students came together and raised their voice that youth has the power and has the capacity to reject any such amendments which undermines the Constitution of India, and the government has the responsibility to give that space to youth, not to heavily crack down on it. This is one such story which shows that despite being the largest democracy, we still have issues when it comes to the right to peaceful protest. When it comes to assembling on public grounds, and it's more so when we have a government, we have people in power who believes in a certain ideology which differs from the protesters, and which the government side was that it's only they are trying to give citizenship, and they're trying to respect the human values by giving them citizenship rights to the prosecuted minorities. And they said that Muslims have been excluded because all the countries are majorly Muslim in nature: Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And since they are Muslim, so having a Muslim minority would be unlikely, right? So that was the major argument which was put forward by Government of India. If we now move on to the second one. So in my own university, which is one of the leading universities in India, it consistently being ranked as one of the top universities in India, and it's also a publicly funded university. Heavily subsidized education is one of the feature of Jawaharlal Nehru University, which allows people from disadvantaged background to come onto to join the academic space and do research and talk about issues which they have not been able to in their respective spaces. So JNU administration it was the university was established in 1969. It also reminds us that in 1968 was a dividing year in history for the student protest and other revolutions which took place in other parts of the country. So JNU since its starting has imbibed the ethos of democracy, participation, and also of resistance. So when JNU administration, the university authorities came out with a notice in 2019 October that the fees of the university, especially the hostel fees, because it's the residential university, will be raised, and the hike was around 150%. If the hike would have been implemented in Jawaharlal Nehru University, it would have become the costliest public central university in India, and which was not acceptable. Such a measure was also not discussed at all with the students in any of the meeting or any of the other platform. JNU has a valid elected representative student union, which normally also has its place in all the legal bodies of the university, such as the university court and the academic council and others. But none of the places the issue was discussed or the students were taken on board. As a result, all of us launched a lockdown of the university. We refused to participate in the academic activities. The university was shut down from October, and it resulted. Students also boycotted the semester examinations were supposed to happen in December. It was more so that the protest coincided with the CAA protest, and as the protest proceeded, the examinations were boycotted. The new semester couldn't be start further on. When the students went onto the streets of Delhi, the issues were taken up by the Ministry of Education, which was then the Ministry of Higher Education in India, Human Resource Development. And then it was said that that a consensus has been reached, but it was not so. So the students were in protest for nearly 5 to 6 months, and it could only be break down once the university was closed for the pandemic. And this was one of the image in which the faculty of the institute of the university as well as the students came together and did a strike and demonstrated their solidarity together. One of the other image which was famous, that the students were not allowed to go in Saudi University to protest because it was cited that it will threaten the public order in the city, because since it's the capital city of India. The last image which I would like to show is one of the march which students are taking, and it says, it's written in the local language Hindi. It says shiksha pe jo kharcha ho budget ka 10वां hissa ho, which says that the amount which is spent on education, it should be at least 10 part. It should be at least 10% of the total GDP of the country. India has not been able to achieve this target. So the issue which was mainly about raising a simple hostel fee was expanded to become a question of publicly funded higher education in India. So what do we understand from these two issues? And how do we see that India's youth are taking the fight onto issues in which they are not represented, or they are underrepresented, or on the issues which they feel are threatening the very nature of the Indian democracy. They are building coalitions across caste, class, religion, gender, regions, and also across the world, which is visible, which is very evident from the hashtag which they used, which the JNU students used while fighting for their cause, which was fees must fall. And we already know that this is a very famous hashtag which was used by the African universities in order to demand more money from the GDP towards public funded higher education, and also to keep the fees low so that students from disadvantaged background can join the universities. It also tells us that social media becomes one of the major tool of garnering support all across the divide lines. So although the student unions in India, student organizations have been divided across many lines, across caste lines, also across right, left, but they all came together. one of the feature which was very important in CA protest, that it was not the protest which could be termed as that only Muslim students are protesting to save their right or to protest against CAA. It was termed as the CAA protest, and all the students came together from different campuses, even the campuses which have never protested in the history before. So what could be the way forward for India, or for the student who is still protesting? So it has to we have to understand that there has to be a shift from being politically correct to political consciousness. And one of the way in which it could be achieved is by emulating programs which I'm currently part of, which is called the Youth and Democracy Program at PRIA, in which youth who are already part of universities uh, are being trained and also being engaged in the conversations of self democracy in the everyday life. So it just not becomes that you have to be politically correct while taking a stand, by not being neutral, but it also becomes important that you develop the political consciousness towards society. You have to take the stand and you have to fight for the right, no matter how the government is going to stop you, no matter how much they're going to suppress you, no matter how much are they going to crack down, how much they are going to do a crackdown on you. But you have to stand on your ground, and you have to fight for the rights which you know they belongs to you, at least in the democracy which India is. So I would end by the message which one of the one of the person who drafted our constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, famously being attributed to. It's called educate, agitate, and organize, and it's also a message which have been emulated in past of the student movement across the world. So when we know that many of our student leaders, many of the student activists are still in jail, are still are being suppressed by the government under draconian laws such as the UAPA, which was one of the laws which was strengthened by the current regime. We are know that thousands of farmers are protesting and sitting in the streets of the national capital, protesting against the new farm laws which have been implemented, which have been passed by this current regime. We know that these are circumstances which presents a challenge to Indian democracy. But at the same time, for youth in India, across the world, in Asia particular, have to come together, have to educate, have to agitate, and have to organize. So I would end my presentation here. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you so much for giving us that glimpse of what's happening inside India amongst students and youth. We'll go, as we're running low on time, we have two more speakers. Our next speaker is Philemon Tuivenu-Levu. He's an indigenous Fijian, International Union for Conservation of Nature, Oceania Regional Office. That's where he works. He has a Master of Law in International Arbitration, Global Energy, and Environment Law. And he's interested in innovative means of sustainable development in third world countries, grassroots level empowerment, and governance practices. Thank you so much for joining us. If we could keep it to 10 minutes, and I give you the floor.
Thank you. Bula from Fiji. Hope you all can hear me. I'd like to thank the Asia Democracy Network for this opportunity to share some light on the youth's issues here in Fiji in terms of democracy. Well, democracy is an internal fight that we've continued to come towards. We gained our independence in 1970 as we were a former British colony. And from then till now, we have had three coups, which illegal overthrown or forceful overthrown of a democratic elected government. So it has been quite a journey. And with these three coups that have happened in my country, we have also had three constitutions which have been imposed on us. And currently we have a constitution that is what the world, what Fiji is working towards. And some of the issues that I'd like to share is in terms of the independence of the arms of government, which are governed under the constitution. And with the current government that we have, they were the regime that had illegally taken over the previous government and are still in power under democratic means, which they were elected in. And currently they have had key people who are aligned with their government put in strategic places, which doesn't really allow democratic progress that we would want. Some of the human rights violations that we are faced with here in Fiji are in terms of in the oppression of its citizens. Trade unionists have been succumbed to be taken in for questioning when they have a form of uprising. There are certain laws which people here deem that are not very fair, but are put to put oppression on trade unionists, and also the right to have a peaceful protest is currently an issue as well that we are facing. And that is what Fiji is currently in terms of democracy. Although we are learning and we are continuing to grow, I think there's a lot more that we can improve on as a country. Just to share some light on the organization that I am part of the Mbua Urban Youth Network, and this is made up of academics and young professionals from the province of Mbua, which is an area where we are all collectively from. And this organization was set up when development had started in our villages in terms of mining, and they needed expert advice and assistance, which we therefore organized ourselves, university students, young professionals all around the urban areas, to go back and give advice. And what we saw was the missing link of proper consultations being given to our people back in the village in terms of FPIC, if some of you may know, which is the free and prior and informed consent, which is a standard recognized under the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights. And this is still a growing issue, which many indigenous sectors of our population face in terms of developments. And we try and make it a transparent process where government is accountable to the decisions that are made, and inclusive of all the sectors of the indigenous community, including the women and the youths, who at most times are not at the central point of the decision making. And that is what our core role is. Way forward, I would say, just as the other speakers, is to educate. I think when we educate the youths, because currently here in Fiji, youths are not as active as we would hope for, because I believe it's because of the lack of advocacy, that for youths to be aware of what is going on around them so that they can demand from the government to be more accountable to the decisions they make. And in terms of the leaders that we put in and the votes, who we vote for and where they would be taking this country towards. And I think that is where the future is for our country, is that we demand a change in leadership, and for better leaders that are more inclusive of youths and the larger sector of society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philemon, and keeping to time. And I think, it's great to hear directly from our, brothers and sisters out in the Pacific. And, we rarely get to hear about what's going on. When we hear Fiji, I am sure what comes to mind is the beautiful blue waters and islands, but there's struggle there, there's challenges there to democracy and governance, and it's great to hear that directly from you, who is directly engaging to bring in more youth into the political process. And we hope to continue this type of partnership and bring, the wider Asia Pacific region together. So thank you so much for that. Next, we have our last speaker. We have Ibrahim Farouk. He's from the Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth, and Advancement, all the way from Nigeria. We hear about what's going on in Nigeria a lot now. He's an active Nigerian citizen. He has 10 years experience in democracy and good governance in cross-cutting fields, and currently the program manager for the Governance and Development Program at Yaga Africa. Ibrahim, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much. And for me, I would say good morning. It's a bit early in the morning here for us. And thank you to the Asian Democracy Network for this opportunity to speak and share some experiences and some stories about what we're doing and how we're promoting democracy in Nigeria. I work with an organization called Yaga Africa. It used to be a longer name. You can see it on the screen, called the Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth, and Advancement. But it's such a long name, but so now we're just known by the acronym. So part of movement called the New Organizations working to promote the participation of young Nigerians, and by extension, young people across the continent and young people across the world. And not too young to run. The name just kind of speaks for itself. It's an advocacy campaign, which also became a constitutional amendment movement to promote the participation of young people as candidates, and saying, oh, just because you're young doesn't mean you're too young to run for public office. One of the reasons why this is very important for us, and we realized that there was a huge participation gap. And for us, representation, inclusion, participation are essential ingredients of any democracy. And not just for us in Africa, not just for many of the speakers from across Asia and the Pacific, and I know Daria from Belarus in Europe as well. But across the world, it seems like democracy is in a decline. We can see events in more established democracies like in the United States of America, where democracy is facing its own challenges. And there are calls for democratic renewal and for that resilience. And we've seen that citizens want to participate in democracy, and various studies have shown that. But what did we do? And how did we go about this movement and this campaign? Essentially, it started with a bill, a piece of legislation in the National Assembly to amend the Constitution to lower the age limits for running for office. Many constitutions around the world have these age limits. In some countries, once you're 18, once you're old enough to vote, you can also run for public office. But for us, the case was that sometimes you had to wait very long periods, sometimes until you're 40, sometimes until you're 35, sometimes until you're 30. So there was that huge wait period. And we realized that many young people wanted to participate in more formal processes. And so we engaged with the National Assembly, we engaged with the Constitution Amendment process. We also used this as an opportunity to teach young people about politics and civic education and how to get involved, how to contact our lawmakers, how to be part of our political processes, and how to run for office. In 2018, we finally got some amendments to our constitution that we had been seeking, and it reduced the age for running for president from 40 to 35, and it reduced some legislative offices from 30 to 25. And that gave many more young people a chance to run for office and actually even win. And we have many more young people now who legislate at the national level and at some sub-national levels as well. But why is this important? Is that not just in Nigeria, or not just in Africa, but across the world. And I was listening to the speaker from India, and he said India has such a huge population. But in my mind, I'm hearing India has such a huge youth population. But if you look at the age of our leaders across the world, it is the average age of leaders across the world keeps going up, while the average population across the world keeps going down. The Interparliamentary Union, the IPU, which puts out a report every year, mentioned that while young people make up over 50% of the world's population, they only make up 3% of legislators. There's just such a huge disconnect. And when we have these conversations, we realize that some of these challenges are not just peculiar to one country or to one region or to one continent. Across the world, we're trying to build models of public leadership and how we can support young people to participate in various ways. One of the most basic ways of participation, of course, is coming out to register, getting on the voters register or the electoral list, and coming out to vote. But we must also make way into those decision-making spaces by running for office. And I was very glad just listening to the story from Fiji as well, and seeing how young people are taking leadership. But beyond just taking leadership and organizing within our communities, there are also spaces to run for office where decisions are made and you're able to have a bit more of some impact and some work and legislation and change to get things done differently in our communities and in our societies. So for us, that is what it is about. We also spoke about things that are happening recently in our country, and there had been a wave of protests against police brutality, which is another issue that many young people face across the world. And it's not an issue that is just peculiar to us. But after so many sustained police brutality, young people finally stood up and said, enough is enough. We have to push some change. We have to ensure that there's police reform. We have to engage with the court systems. We have to engage with the panels of inquiry that have been set up. But beyond that, we must also realize that what happens within our political and our governance and our democratic spaces affect us, especially as young people, more than it will affect anyone else. And we have the opportunity to bring in our energy, our creativity, our innovation, our resourcefulness into our governance systems, and not just leave it for an older crop of politicians. But as I start to round up, let me just note that when we talk about participation of young people, we're not advocating to kick out our older politicians, because there's enough space to ensure that there's intergenerational dialogue, and younger people in political spaces can learn from older people, and older people can also learn from younger people. And we must continue to increase the participation of marginalized groups, young people, young women especially, persons living with disabilities, all make up such a huge population in our societies. But when it comes to representation and decision making, their representation is sorely lacking. I think as I round up, that we have resilient societies, we have resilient young people, and we must channel that resilience into our democratic policy, our democratic practice, our democratic culture, and renew the democracies that we have by ensuring that we have participation for all the various groups, we have representation, we have inclusion, and those are the values that the Not Too Young to Run movement, which I was part of, adopted. And as we build our movements and our networks, we must identify what are those values that all of us share. So regardless of where you come from in the region, regardless of what other identities you subscribe to, those values, and for us, those values were representation and participation and inclusion. We must find those shared values and organize around them effectively. Thank you very much for having me. And I look forward to receiving some questions as we wrap up this session.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, for that inspirational, finishing it off with such empowering words. I can't agree with you more on making sure to give that political space to not only youth, but to other diverse groups. We are at our end of this session. I've been a terrible moderator because we don't have much time for question and answer. So if I may, we will share the email addresses of the speakers here today. And if we could have questions emailed to them, or if you could send it to us at adn@adnasia.org, and we will route your questions to the speakers and get those answered for you. So we could go ahead and move on to the next session. Thank you again for the fascinating insight and to what is happening in your respective corners of the world. I think through this, we have learned that a lot of our struggles are pretty similar. And I think there's a lot of space for us to really work together, not only within the region of Asia Pacific, but also interregionally in Latin America, Europe, and Africa, all across the globe. So we hope that our we won't end here. We will continue to network with each other. It was great meeting you all, and I will end the session. Thank you so much. I will hand it over to the next moderator, Corel. Should we take like 3-minute break or bathroom break? I'm sure people need to.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think the break
okay.
is okay.
Okay, great. So we'll take about a 3-minute break, and then we'll come back, and then we'll start the next session. Thank you so much, everybody.
Karel, the voice, we cannot hear you.
You are still muted.
Oops, apologies. Okay, good
Great.
afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world. We hope that you are well and are tuned in our program. So we are now in session 2 of our program titled the Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia and the Pacific. And we are now in session 2 titled Solidarity Building and National Movements in Asia Pacific. But before we start, I would like to encourage everyone to please fill out our solidarity poll, which has been ongoing. And we will process the results and synthesize these later on in the later parts of the program. So before I start and give a bit of synthesis or a bit of an introduction. So without a doubt, the past 2 years for democracy has been very difficult. We have witnessed widespread threats. We have witnessed crackdown against dissent and disinformation and the pervasive harassment of HRDs and attempts to weaken democratic institutions across the regions. But fortunately, that we are seeing hope, and that these challenges are fortunately being tackled by the youth who are now engaging to promote and protect democracies and freedoms across the region. So in this session, we will look at the ongoing national pro-democracy movements in 5 Asia-Pacific countries, namely the Solomon Islands, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Bangladesh. So we are fortunately joined by 5 active youth leaders who are at the forefront in organizing and sustaining the democratic clamor and spirit to promote and protect democracies in these spaces. So after this session, we will also be holding a short survey to engage with the audience on their perceptions and challenges with regard to democracy in the region. So I would like to remind all the speakers to please mute your microphones when you are not speaking, and to please be mindful of the speed of your speech so that our sign language interpreter would be able to follow. So to start with, we are starting with Cambodia, who is represented by Somali Kuom. So Somali is a freelance consultant and researcher, and she has considerable experience researching genocide with a focus on victim participation at the extraordinary chambers of courts in Cambodia. She is also currently studying an Asia Pacific Master of Arts in Human Rights and Democratization, or APMA, at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies in Mahidol University. Somali, I give you the platform to speak about challenges to democracy and how the youth are surviving in Cambodia. Over to you, Somali, please.
Yes, thank you very much for the moderator for introducing me. So, firstly, I would like to share my screen first. I have presentation. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. Greeting from Cambodia. My name is Somali Kuom, and it is a really great honor that I can be a part of this panel. So before I'm going to start to talk about the how to use movement in Cambodia, but before that, I would love to introduce about the Cambodian, how the Cambodian become and changing in the last 2 decades. So firstly, Cambodian have the peace agreement start in peace agreement on 23rd October 1991, and bring with the United Nations that we call in here, UNTAC came to Cambodia, and it was the election in June 1993. Later on, Cambodian have started with the democratic constitution in 1993. And then from 1993 until 2018, there are six election time in Cambodia. In here, I would like to say that all the overview of the Cambodian before the election, there have a lot of issues. For example, is the treatment of the activists and also the arrested by using the criminal code from the court, from the government to restrict of the freedom of activists and also the political representative. Moreover, from in the last from 2012 until now, there are 140 cases in the court now, like the court of complaint. So then it because of the social media, they have 96 cases that they post on Facebook, they post on YouTube, they post on TikTok to criticize about the government activity. So they have arrested, and then now the case is in the court. In the amount of that, 43 people has arrested by the spreading, or we can say like type of the fake news based on the law code, based on the telecommunication, and also the law on peaceful assembly. Like they have arrested because they're using the social media to express their opinion, and also they have tagged in the fake news as well. In recently, the government is trying to restrict more on the freedom of expression, and they use with the cybercrime law, which try to control all the internet, how to, like, if anyone using the internet to post anything. So cybercrime law, it's gonna be restrict everything that they post. So they can be banned the page, or they can be banned the another website. I can take an example about the Cambodia Daily. If we open the page of the Cambodia, so sorry, I should introduce what is Cambodia Daily. Cambodia Daily is the independent media in Cambodia, and they have been in the last month. It's regarding the taxation. So in here, I could not access to the link of the Cambodia Daily news, but if I change the VPN on my computer, I can be access the link of the media. And in recently, in June, government is trying to strict more on the expression of the people that they're using with the draft law or public order law, and now it is going on. And I can take an example about what is included with the law. For example, in the article 11, the prohibit selling the product on the sidewalk that could be affect to the public order. So if the government is banned within the sorry, sorry, so I can continue. So in the article 11, the prohibits this article make affect to the citizen or make affect to the people who is depend on the living by selling along the street or along the way, so they cannot have afford with their livelihood. And also with the noise at the public place. So what is the restrict in the next future if the people would like to do if the people would like to do the demonstrate, they're gonna be banned by this law. For the youth movement in Cambodia, we can observe that 2015 youth are more active. They can be expressed what is the opinion about the politics, about the environment, about the social, the social opinion. They can criticize more. However, in 2017, the youth participant is less than before because of there are many issues regarding the freedom of expression, that they could not express what they are thinking. They feel fear because the government has arrested a lot of people already. They are still in the prison, and then it's make them to less engaged. However, they are including with the factor that I mentioned above, they are really lack of the encourage from the family. And we can say that some of youth, they would like to join with the activity or solidarity with the another group for like to stop anything. Like, for example, to stop with the public order law in recently, but they could not express themselves because the family have banned. Like even me, sometimes I could not express what I'm thinking in this, what I want to do. Sometimes we have to hide anything from our family to join with the group or to support any group that we would like. And also the future background, as we know that in Cambodia, they have the one record that if we got this criminal code, we could not do any work in the public government or public sector in the future. For example, if you record with some, it might be some effect with their background if they have the bad recording to the criminal code with their activity. And some of youth is focused more on the education because they believe that the education would be changed in the future if the people in recently that they can join, like they could not join what they want to do. So they suppose that if they know that they this way is wrong, this activity is wrong, the government say this is wrong, but they could not express. So then they try to find a way to engage themselves to the education, and then they can use what they have to know from the last experience to tell the young generation about it. For the youth division in Cambodia, we have with the two youth type. One is in urban and another one is rural youth. For the urban, they have more high educated, so then they can have with the critical thinking more than youth. And then they have they can access any information through the internet, through the modern technology, and they have the informal supporter as well. But for the rural youth, they lose education. they are non-sustained income. That's why sometimes if they want to join anything, they have to sacrifice themselves. Also, they could not go, like they get the pressure from the people around them or from the boss if they would like to join with the for example, like any demonstrate. So they could not, but they really engage. So I think I have 5 minutes. What did I do so far to engage with the youth in Cambodia? The thing that I can do so far, I just like writing the sum of research by using with the history reflection from the genocide, not from the genocide, it's about like the genocide, write a research and then reflect them that this is the human right abuse. And then you can consider in the future that if you see this activity, if you see this, like this concept, it is not a human right, but we never give the opinion like, okay, this is human right abuse. Just like give them an opinion, provide the option, and then let them decide and consider by themselves rather than tell them what they have to do. Yes, so it is from my session, from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Somali, for your presentation, which outlined, I think, some of the pervasive issues that we are facing widespread in the region, no? Such as restrictions and access to information and the use of draconian laws by certain authorities to crack down on dissent. But fortunately, the youth are coming up with actions that use, for instance, technologies and greater engagements that encourages greater the spread of advocacies pertaining to demands for democracy. So thank you again for your presentation. And now we will go to the Solomon Islands on the other side of the region. And representing the Solomon Islands is Mr. Bobby Ciarani from the Honiara Youth Council. He made significant impacts to resolve issues severely affecting the youth in his country, specifically hunger, sexual violence, and sanitation issues. He also founded a biogas initiative to address waste disposal and sanitation issues, for which he became one of the 4 winners of the Commonwealth Youth Awards in 2019. So I would like to welcome Mr. Bobby Ciarani to give us an insight on the challenges and opportunities by the youth, experienced by the youth in the Solomon Islands. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Bobby Ciarani, and as already been mentioned by the moderator, I serve as the coordinator for the Honiara Youth Council in the Solomon Islands. The Honiara Youth Council is the provincial youth body that acts as the official voice of young people in the capital of Solomon Islands to raise issues that affect young people in Solomon Islands. I would first of all wish to acknowledge the Asia Democratic Network for this rare opportunity to have me here to share some of my thoughts and experiences as a young youth worker in the Solomon Islands. I shall share with us on youth strive to uphold democracy in Solomon Islands. In the context of Solomon Islands, democracy is defined as a governance in which the supreme power is vested in the people and exercised by them through their elected leader under a free electoral system. Solomon Island is a state of society characterized by formal equality of rights and privilege. However, personally, I believe that democracy is not only a system of governance, but a social system that ensures that humanity lived a life of fulfillment and that they have the choice to decide which destiny they follow and path to fulfillment that they envisioned. The various definitions of democracy contextualizes different perspectives, whether it be philosophical, ideological, economic. For democratic countries, like in the Solomon Islands, the main backbone of democracy is our very own national constitution. For Solomon Islands, our constitution is founded on the fundamental principles and values of democracy. These values become the fundamental rights of citizens and youths of Solomon Islands. The Constitution of Solomon Islands clearly stated in the first section that Solomon Islands shall be a sovereign democratic state. The Constitution is founded on the fundamental rights and values of democracy. These were rights to life, liberty, freedom of expressions, as to name a few. For me, as a young Solomon Islander, I find it very important and useful to understand my democratic right under the provisions provided in my national constitution. Understanding the constitution is very important as it lies the foundation to safeguard our democracy on the events when our democracy is under attack. In the Solomon Islands, there are various challenges that we face when it comes to democracy as a system. First of all, our culture. While we appreciate that we Pacific Island countries fought to uphold democratic system and its values, we realize that most of our cultures and traditional governance are monarchy in nature. I will give an example from Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is a country shared between three races of the Pacific, which are Melanesians, Polynesians, and Micronesians. Each of the three races uphold and practices their very own culture and traditions, which are diverse and unique in their own nature. However, most of the three traditional governance have a common similarity, which is the traditional governance system which they practiced before the British influence and the independence of Solomon Islands in 1978. That is our chiefly system and the big man system, which we normally call. Thus, it imposed some contradiction to the democratic system. Even now, with the introduction of democratic system in place, people still observe and practice to some extent some of the cultural norms. Take, for example, in our chiefly system, the freedom of expression is limited to some extent, as women and children and even youths have been given less opportunity to express themselves than men and elder men. Freedom of movement become restricted as they are placed in the society that are only restricted for a certain privileged people. This belief have become a conflict to the current democratic system in relation to individual rights as stated in the national constitution. Technology and social media. The pressure that technology has on democracy can be deemed as challenge as well. Despite the fact that we know that technology also is a driver for more advocacy to safeguard our democracy. The new rise of social media platform has enabled more effective online campaigns and activism by young people. People and young activists on democratic rights and values that are believed to be under attack by leaders. Just late last month and early this month in December, our Minister for Communications and Aviation brought a motion in the cabinet to temporarily suspend Facebook in Solomon Islands till such a time that proper regulations are placed to regulate new users, how users use social media. The reason why the government planned suspend Facebook in Solomon Islands is to protect the leaders in parliament from threats and defamation of character by youths of Solomon Islands and users. Most of the young people in Solomon Islands find these reasons as unjustified and irresponsible due to the fact that Facebook is not only used to raise issues, but also a place where young people socialize, do purchase and selling of goods, advocacy. Furthermore, the move to ban this giant social media is seen as a direct violation to the Section 12 of our national constitution, which is the right to freedom of expression. It is quite obvious that few young activists in Solomon Islands continue to raise important issues that affects young people in Solomon Islands on a political level, as well as exposing corruption, whilst calling for transparency and accountability on the use of public funds and resources. This, we see, does not go down well with our political leaders in Solomon Islands. As a result, becomes the decision to temporarily suspend the use of Facebook in Solomon Islands. As an ongoing response to these government decisions, young people, women, youth organizations, women's organizations, and certain citizens, concerned citizens in Solomon Islands continuously express their objections to the action taken and announcements given by the Prime Minister and his ministers. Youth groups and youth organizations are currently discussing options and actions to take once the ban takes effect. So, youth as a forefront for democracy defense. Issues that affect the life of young people, especially on legislations that deprive the fundamental rights of citizens and corruptions, are the issues of concern in that the people and youths in Solomon Islands responded to. In the Solomon Islands, critical citizens become popular due to more freedom to question and challenge the authorities in accordance to the fundamental rights provided under the National Constitution. I wish to share with us a case on anti-corruption legislation in Solomon Islands, which we young people in Solomon Islands, especially Honiara and the youth organization which I represent, participate in. That is in 2018. This is during the anti-corruption bill and the whistleblowers bill legislation. In 2018, there was a long time standing legislation that was brought forward to be tabled in the floor of Parliament. Now, these were the anti-corruption bill and the whistleblowers bill. To the dismay and disappointment to all citizens of Solomon Islands, especially the young people, the bill was withdrawn on the floor of Parliament on the grounds that the bill requires more amendment and more consultations. This has caused an uproar to all the populace of Solomon Islands, since corruption has already ravaged the country, where politicians took advantage of the system and used public funds for their own advantage. The action taken by the government does not go down well with the general public and the young people of Solomon Islands. In rapid response, civil society organizations in Solomon Islands and the Honiara Youth Council make plans to execute an anti-corruption campaign under the slogan, "Bring the ACB back." ACB stands for Anti-Corruption Bill. My team from the Honiara Youth Council quickly distributed petition form to the general public to sign. Our team, along with the civil societies and Transparency Solomon Islands, continuously publish media releases, do radio talkback shows, and printing anti-corruption t-shirts for general public. Just before the Parliament sitting in September in 2018, the civil society and our team in Honiara Youth Council and our young people launched a peace protest march to the Prime Minister's office and submit the petition. The campaign does not stop there. Young people continuously came in big number during the parliament sitting to pressure our leaders so that the leaders know that we actually meant business to have that legislation brought back in parliament. At last, during that sitting period, the anti-corruption bill was brought back to the parliament for the first mentioning, and later in 2018, we got passed and launched on the 11th December 2018. Institution is also very important, where we should also use to, as youths, to advocate for democracy. Institutions and formal government structures are formed to uphold and regulate democratic values and to promote good governance. Institutions and structures are also there so that young people can easily raise issues and do campaign in a manner that is organized and respected. Despite the different government institutions established, I encourage young people to start mastering roles of the different institutions established and government structures that are set up. Effective advocacy and democratic campaign resulted when it is done in accordance to the law and channeled through right institutions. Anything that was done outside of the structure can have some consequences. Now, youth active participation in organized youth organization, both community-based, local level, national and international level, is also very important. Active participation on organized youth program is very important. To be organized carries more weight towards successful advocacy and campaign than to do it alone and informally. I believe that active participation in community, the local level, national and international level gives credibility to us young people as well as youth organizations that we represent. More active participation requires intact collaboration between youth organizations, both in the communities, locally, nationally, and internationally. In Solomon Islands, especially in the capital, Honiara, community youth groups, the communities get organized and registered under our Provincial Youth Council. The Provincial Youth Councils, we have 9 provinces in the Solomon Islands, and these Provincial Youth Council are connected to our national youth body, which is our National Youth Congress. This National Youth Congress is linked to the Pacific Youth Council and the Commonwealth Youth Council. It is important that we operate through these channels because each platform has their own influencing capacity with respect to the type of mandate and influencing spaces. Political participation by youths is also very important. From my experience, I find that youth political participation is one effective way which we can make influence in the political level. In the Solomon Islands, we have multi-party systems whereby the government is formed from coalition political parties. I am currently a member of one of the political parties in Solomon Islands, namely the Solomon Islands United Party. The political party provided a space for us young people to engage and allow us to plan and deliver our activities. Under the political party, we established the United Party Youth League, which I am currently the president. Through this political party platform, I am able to raise concerns that young people are facing to our members of parliament, and they can share those concerns during the parliament sittings. We are currently working on activities and plans to promote democracy in Solomon Islands using our political party platform. Just to summarize, let me sum up by saying that despite the struggles and challenges each democratic country in the Pacific and Asia faces, regardless of economic performance and development status of each country, I can still say that democracy is still the best system of governance in comparison to its alternatives. Democratic system enables good governance and accountability. Democracy provides equal opportunities, better health service, education, and human development for their youths and citizens in comparison to other systems of large-scale governance. We as young people must take all initiative to protect our fundamental democratic values by keeping check and balance on how leaders make the decisions, by ensuring the decisions are fair, legislations safeguarding our democratic values and serves the best interest of all citizens. After all, democracy is all about the people. It is ultimately the sole responsibility of us youths in the Pacific and also in Asia to defend and work together in partnership and network for the future of our democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bobby, for your presentation, which I think highlights the importance of bringing about change by providing the youth opportunities to participate in policy and institutional spaces, no? Which I think your group has successfully demonstrated, and we would want to, see some successes as well in the Asia region itself. And now we are heading to Thailand, that is currently has some challenges as well in terms of its democracy, despite establishing a civilian government in 2019. So to represent the country's youth, we have here Jutatip Sirikan, a 21-year-old a student leader who is not currently the president of the Student Union of Thailand. Recently, she was arrested for her role in the youth-led protests that have been occurring all over the country since the start of the year, which demands for accountability and wide governmental and political reforms and a greater democratic rights for the Thai people. So I would like to hand over the stage to Jutatip Sirikan for her presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Jutatip Sirikan. I'm from Free Youth Thailand. Our organization aims to liberate Thailand from military authoritarian, accomplish the People's Constitution, and promoting human rights, freedom, and democratic socialism. Free Youth is a social movement organization. We are the first group that take the demonstration on the street and start the pro-democracy demonstration since July alongside with other groups. We had a lot of subscribers and followers in social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our role mainly on communicate and now the demonstration calling people to join us. There is no the dominant group among the protesters. Each other group work together and help each other. The motivation comes from the context of Thai political. Since 2014 until now, there is plenty of unacceptable behavior of the government in violate freedom and right of people, corruption and authoritarian regime. For example, our society had a problem and the pursuit conflict of call it for a long time. There is no democracy in Thailand, lack of human rights and freedom of speech, and corruption. All of it came from incompetent government that came from military coup. The existence of the coup government led to decade and made Thailand reserve to bad position with incompetence. Staff and authoritarian control over without people consent continue to sink the Thailand for favor a few to pursue personal interests. Most important part reformation of monarchy is the most to do, and involvement and influence of royal family to Thai politics always be problem, and moreover, people not able to question. Is the constitution and government gave the king a power that able to involve and influence democratic politics is the main lot of a lot of or loyal budget behavior of royal family scandal and undesirable behavior or etc, and especially human rights and freedom of speech were violated. Less majesty law question missing of Thai political activities caused by the monarch. Main would be on social context. Persecution from the state political structure of military authoritarian under support from rich and powerful economic and political elite. People in Thailand is lack of education about right, freedom and democracy. Deep root propaganda, bad education system and critical thinking create an ignorance with no awareness to subject that matter, make the process of democracy slow and hardly. We want international to recognize our movement and our problem. We want international put an eye on us. May we work together as an alliance for future development to our organization and Thailand to international community. We going to win over injustice and the oligarchs to accomplish our goal, bring equality and prosperity to our society, continue to develop the country, to become the global contributor alongside the other in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Jutatip. So I was actually in Thailand a few months ago, and I witnessed the vibrancy of youth engagement in the protests that happened. So I would like to take this opportunity as well as a member of ADN on behalf of the organization to express our solidarity with the Thai youth. So now I would like to proceed to our next presentation from Indonesia, represented by Mr. Manik Margana Mahendra, who is the president of the Student Union of the Universitas Thailand. He started joining social movements in 2015 when he became a student of the Universitas Indonesia. He brought forth many issues, to name a few: corruption, human rights, health, economic, and environment, among other fields. And those that are related to his education background as a public health student. Today, he still plays a part in the People Movement. So I would like to welcome Mr. Manik for his presentation. Over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear my voice? Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm sorry. I respectfully ask you to lower your expectations for my presentations, but I do really believe that we will learn together in this forum. So yeah, just started. Okay. I want to share my presentations. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, okay. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Asia Democracy Network for giving me the opportunity to talk about youth movement in Indonesia. I am Manik Margana Mahendra. Oh, sorry. Okay. I am Manik Margana Mahendra, and maybe it's hard for some of you to pronounce my full name, but you can simply call me Manik. In 2019, I was the president of Student Union in Universitas Indonesia, and now I'm still active in social works with my friends. Please bear in mind that this material I'm about to present to you is of my own view. There is to say, it doesn't mean that every youth in Indonesia it is utmost importance for, it doesn't mean that every youth in Indonesia endorse my perspective or my view. Okay. So to understand democracy in Indonesia, it is of utmost for us to delve a little bit into the historical context. Yep. Indonesia was governed by a dictator for 32 years. I guess I don't have to explain that dictatorship doesn't come hand in hand with democracy. During that period of 32 years, we had election, but they were all rigged, and there are numerous accounts of human rights violation, to name a few: police brutality, kidnapping of activists, a mass shooting by military, and corruption. However, in Indonesia, Indonesia underwent monetary crisis in 1997, and that led to a massive protest in 1998. This movement in Indonesia is known as reformasi. In practical level, reformasi is a revolution because it was followed by the overthrowing of dictator leader. In conceptual level, it is also a revolution because from that moment on, Indonesia became a democratic republic, to say the least on paper. Yeah, some of you must be wondering why I said it is only on paper. Well, because from what I can understand, democracy is a safe environment for freedom of speech. However, that is not always the case. In Indonesia, you can't harshly criticize the government. For instance, when you talk bad about the president, you will be apprehended. And that happened. I personally know some of them. And maybe that case is not only relevant in Indonesia, but our malpractice of democracy doesn't stop there. Ideally, democracy should come with the full appreciation of human rights. But many cases of human rights violation in the past haven't been solved until this very day, such as the massacre of 1965 to 1966, where up to 1 million members of leftist movement were systematically murdered. Apart from that, there is also the case of kidnapping and killing of activists, and assault of human rights defender. To make it more even complicated, some alleged suspects of the violation were approached by those who are in power to consolidate, resulting in their impunity. Despite all that, you might think that at least we are still democratic, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Public policies and public opinion are so disconnected. The House of Representatives doesn't even represent all of the people. That is not a baseless claim from me because I have experienced it personally, and it happened in 2019. There was a big movement in 2019. It was triggered by the proposed bill of law that regulates the state auxiliary organ for anti-corruption, or we call it as Komisi Pemberantasan Korupsi or KPK. The proposed bill is unpopular in the public, but it was passed by the legislative anyway, and no opposition there. That could only mean that the parliament doesn't even listen to the public, to the people. And the case doesn't stop there, because there are another examples where the bills is popular but doesn't pass, just like the eradication of violence for sexual violence, or RUU Penghapusan Kekerasan Seksual. As you can probably conclude that there are many problems prior to the 2019 movement. They really sparked reformasi di korupsi. Reformasi di korupsi is the spirit of 2019 movement. What is reformasi di korupsi, you may ask? Reformasi di korupsi is the spirit of the movement. The essence of the movement is to criticize the current situation that contradicts the idea of reformasi. So in English, we call it as reformasi corrupted. Just like what I have said to you before about reformasi on 1998. So the movement itself demanded 7 things. There are, I present to you in Bahasa, but I will tell you in English. First is against problematic draft of new bills that are not beneficial for the people, such as the draft for the criminal code, the new criminal code, and another. And then we are also reject for anti-corruption body new bill, because it is weakening the KPK itself, or the organ of the anti-corruption in Indonesia. And then we also push for the ratification of draft of new bill that support and protect vulnerable people. Just like what I've said before, RUU Penghapusan Kekerasan Seksual, or eradication for sexual violence. And then the second, we want to cancel the problematic acting chief of anti-corruption body that was appointed by House of Representatives. And then we also supporting the functional segregation between military or police and civil office. And we also want to stop military interventionism in Papua and free the political prisoners. And then another, we also want to stop activist criminalizations. We want to stop private land clearing in Kalimantan and Sumatra. On 2019, it was such a big fire in the forest in Kalimantan and Sumatra. And last but not least, we also want to resolve past human rights violation and bringing human rights violator to the court. But after the movement, after the protest on 24th of September, the demand is going bigger and bigger, because we demand the state, we demand the government to end their repressive action to the protesters. And then I want to tell you about how we consolidate with each other in this movement, or how the strategy of this movement that can be massive. In terms of communication, we make sure that we use a safe medium to prevent information leak, because it is a common practice in Indonesia that government bugs the activists. We also brainstorm intensively with the leaders or representative of another student union and civil society groups. And for the effort of spreading ideas, we really use every platform that we can find to maximize exposure. And the strategy in this is to utilize pop culture approach in order to make it more relatable to as many people as possible. So you can see here, we use such a meme for the Avenger movies. Just like in an Avenger movies, the Avenger assemble, just like the demonstrators or the protesters from the students, and then labor or another civil society groups that comes together to against Thanos, or we have to say against the government. the corrupt government. And then we also using another symbol people in Indonesia become a meme for the poster of our protest, for our propaganda. And then this is, you can see, yep, we make some propaganda, a unique propaganda that will make it more relatable for many peoples, not only for the peoples that have clear view for political movement, but also to all of the people that maybe they don't really understand about the politics. This is one of the example. It said that we don't need House of Representatives, we need Hokage. If you are following Naruto movie, maybe you will know Hokage is the leader of the Konoha village in the Naruto, and Naruto is one of the Hokage itself. So this is one propaganda that we use to make this movement more relatable and going relevant to all of the youth. And then another of that, I think it may not be as surprising to some of you, but it may be to me when the K-pop stands actually march together with us. We get a lot of support from them, just like you can see it, Kim Namjoon, and then another BTS supporter, Blackpink, and another K-pop idols. They are coming to the protest and they march together with us. So what can I say? That this movement is very, very popular with the public domain. That is to say, it is supported by a lot of many people. That is why the movement itself is still going until this very point. I mean, this year and this day. Well, the scale of the movement was nationwide. Albeit this slow start, even though we start small, it created ripple effect. And at the end of the day, the estimate of total of this movement is bigger than the Reformasi on 1998. Although not every single demand from the protest was fulfilled, the movement still persists regardless of the different jargon it has today. Just like mosi tidak percaya or maybe another jargon. The main focus of the latest protest was to cancel the Omnibus Law bill about labor regulations, as well as how the government handled this pandemic. But the main idea of the movement is still the same. We are fighting for a better condition, and we are fighting for our democracy. I think that's all that I can present to you. Hope we can learn together from this presentation and from this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manik, for sharing updates and the challenges the youth are facing in Indonesia. So perhaps when you become Hokage in the future, you can help us resolve these issues that you have shared. So for our last presentation, I would like to call Mr. Rezar Rahman Lenin, who is from Bangladesh. He is an academic activist based in Dhaka and Cox's Bazar, and currently he is responsible for monitoring and reporting the violations of human rights, fundamental freedoms, and also builds the human rights community in Bangladesh. So in addition, at LawLife, an organization he is affiliated with, he is also in charge of implementing a capacity building program as the executive director in 4 divisional cities in Bangladesh. The program titled Human Rights Violations by Law Enforcement Agencies under National Laws in Bangladesh, Building Awareness and Engaging Human Rights Defenders. So for our final presentation, I would like to call Mr. Rezar for his presentation on the youth struggle in Bangladesh. Over to you, Mr. Rezar.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing such a wonderful event. I'm glad to be part of it, but unfortunately, I don't know, some weird reason, I could not open my camera at the laptop. Tried several times by on and off to the laptop, but nothing works. But anyway, I hope there is an interesting picture I posted at my profile picture. It will help our participant to understand what are the dynamics we are facing in the back when some activists and academic activists, human rights defenders are working in Bangladesh. There is some shadow monument exists from our back, and we need to be a little bit careful in terms of our work. But anyway, I think I would try to be very precise. As you probably know, that I already told that the monitoring and reporting the human rights violation during the COVID period, I'm mostly focusing into this situation. I try to analyze some of the situation analysis. The given situation is very bad, I should say. As compared to other Asian countries, it's not much different probably, but some of the things are quite very unique and which can lead to a number of atrocity crimes. First of all, I think the fundamental freedoms and human rights situation in terms of freedom of expression and freedom of association and assembly, freedom of religion and belief, and right to life and academic freedom. These 5 fundamental freedoms, I think, heavily compromised during this COVID-19 period. First, I would like to talk about freedom of expression online and offline. As you probably know, number of Asian countries adopted cyber laws into their respective countries. Bangladesh also did. Since 2006, Bangladesh have a Information and Communication Technology Act, and that was amended several times, some of the section actually being repealed. And then in 2018, we got a Digital Security Act, and that Digital Security Act is a draconian repressive act. The youth and also the other human rights activists around the country, nationally and internationally, regionally, and requesting and appealing to the Bangladesh government to repeal that particular act. This act is such a horrendous act, almost around 100 plus journalists actually criminalized to that act. And during this COVID period, from, let's say that the striking point was March till November, around 800 cases actually being filed. My friends actually inside the bar, some of the friends we managed to release from the jail. Some of the friends are yet to get the bail. And this is not necessarily only youth activists, but this is the people who are working as an artist, as an academic, as an mass critical voices, and all forms of, and also including the journalists as well. So, but when these arrests, detention, and judicial harassment is happening, it doesn't mean that there is no resistance. There is a strong resistance over the social media. There is a strong resistance even when we have been asked to maintain the social distance and physical distance during the COVID. Many people went to the street, protest, and standing for their friends, family, and also for fighting the legal battles and requesting the international, regional, and local support. And some of the cases, probably I can say that in June, July, there was around 10 to 12 journalists were detained. Now, almost 5-6 of them are under the bar, behind the bar, but number of them got a bail. And of course, these cases, when the Digital Security Act case is actually being filed against an individual, then immediately they have to take into the custody in many cases, and they have to serve them. This is quite normal and quite understandable for us to feel that he or she will be barred for few months. And then obviously in a legal process and proceedings, we have to stand for the people who are actually quite accused, quote unquote. And then they probably get a secure bail if they can afford a good lawyers, and sometimes High Court division judges are very much careful in terms of giving the bail and also giving other forms of relief to that individuals. So freedom of expression situation is very bad in short. Second thing, freedom of association and assembly, as you know that there is a restriction because of the COVID, but we are not sure those restrictions are temporary, whether those restrictions are temporary or forever, or it will continue for a longer period, even the situation not necessarily permit us. Usual logic from to curtailing the fundamental freedom on assembly and association, freedom of association and assembly, usual logic is national security. Usual logic is obviously the health emergency. Although they didn't declare the health emergency, there is a specific legal provision, legal mechanism to deal with the health crisis and the health emergency situation. But not necessarily those health laws actually being applied, but some of the extensive order, government declaration and other things actually came, and of course cultural affair and other forms of harassment actually happen. But few interesting movements happen. For example, there was a massive cases of domestic violence against the female and also child and youth in this country. The number of rape cases is quite high compared to last few years. Today's news and reporting mechanisms suggest 1,500 rape cases actually happen, and among them number of victims actually committed suicide, and also not only committed suicide but also still the victims are facing number of harassment by the perpetrators. Not necessarily all the perpetrators usually being detained. Some high-profile perpetrators are there, but the women's rights activists, along with the human rights activists, civil society members went to the street, and number of days they protested in the month of October and November, and it still is going on. So this is a good sign, obviously, but at the same time, this is a depressing situation in terms of getting relief and justice from the judicial branches. Freedom of expression and freedom of association and assembly situation is also bad, as I said. And in terms of right to life, obviously, right to life is one of the gross violation is happening in this country, not necessarily by the government very directly, but indirectly there is a not necessarily health management system exists at all. So that causes a huge number of COVID patients, around 7,000 individual COVID patient or asymptomatic patient actually being died because of the COVID-19 virus. But when the COVID-19 virus and people are talking about vaccination around the world, we actually successfully come up with a certain relief from that in terms of vaccination and also identification of the COVID-19 virus. Probably we are the first, our scientists around the world in the month of March in 17 and 18, there was a declaration that we have an antigen test which can recognize the virus, but then government did not necessarily support those initiatives, and the causes now we are observing. We bought a number of antigen kits from Chinese companies, and then these similar forms of crisis still exist. But what I want to make the point here, these are the probably indirect effect of the government response to the COVID-19, which causes a number of deaths. But there is extrajudicial killing is happening around the COVID-19 period. There is a enforced disappearance cases actually happen around the COVID-19 period. From March to July, I'm just specified to March to July, there is a reason for it. At least around 40 plus extrajudicial killing happened. From March 2020 to till today, I think 22 enforced disappearance cases happened so far. And police brutality, torture by the law enforcement agency and lawmakers, and also by the government official is quite rampant. Is simple. Not even someone is not wearing mask in a public space. They have been beaten brutally. They have been harassed into the street. Also, sometimes they fine. It depends what class of people you are. If you are from the wealthy family, then probably a little bit fine. We can release you immediately, or even if you have some phone call from somewhere, then you can get an immediate release. But some of the mass people, the people who doesn't have a economic capacity or even courage to, quote unquote, courage to negotiate, then they had to face a torturous situation. So right to life situation is bad, of course. And academic freedom issue, I think at least 7 government official, government school teacher and college teacher are actually being fired from their job, at least 7 of them. And those are reported. Number of university issued number of regulation, for example, not to talk with the media without the permission from the university authority. So this curtailment and compromisation of the freedom of expression happened into the academia as well. Academic institution, no exam is happening. Exam is happening on an online basis, but classes not being conducted properly. Number of private university curtail their staffs because of lack of students, and lack of the students into the village and other subdivisional cities. That causes a child marriage as well. Women actually went to, the teenage girls, probably father and mother thought that, oh, there is enough study you have done, but now we are in a financial crisis. Probably it's not a good time for us to continue your study. Better you get married and then try to settle yourself. So these are the situation. I just try to discuss about the 5 fundamental freedom issue. To me, is a very important, and for us, it's a very important. But I would like to talk about a little bit, probably 1 or 2 minutes, regarding the institutional responses. The National Human Rights Commission is one of the protection agencies supposed to intervene in when there is a violation, gross violation of human rights, systematic violation of human rights. But National Human Rights Commission's response to the civil and political rights issue, not necessarily very encouraging. Very bad, I should say, but in terms of negotiating and discussion with the government, ministry and different departments, it is quite encouraging. For the first time, probably we have seen last 7 and 8 months, they start writing 70 to 80 letters to the different ministry. But in response, that we don't know, we are not sure that whether those ministry return back to the National Human Rights Commission with a reply. In some certain cases, obviously we assume that they replied, but in mostly the civil and political rights issue, we are not sure whether they replied or not. Judiciary was closed for 2.5 months. We didn't have a formal lockdown. We didn't have a formal lockdown at all. We have a general holiday being declared. So during this holiday period, number of commission, the government official, and including the judiciary was shut down. So as you probably know, many Commonwealth countries, when there is a provision into the constitution, that when the violation of fundamental rights actually happen, then you can directly file the case at the court and asking to reestablish your fundamental rights. But when 2.5 months judiciary was closed or shut down, then how come we enforce the fundamental rights if someone's fundamental rights actually violated? So it's a kind of, to me, normalization of state of exception, state of emergency, not even declaring the state of emergency, but there is a state of emergency actually we are in. So when there is a state of emergency, when there is a gross violation of human rights in terms of life, livelihood, freedom of expression, freedom of association, academia, and in each and every sector, human rights defenders, journalists, and others. So I tend to see there is a slow burning genocidal situation exists, probably like in Cambodia. So these slow burning genocide can lead to a genocidal situation or atrocity crime situation. I should say in a final words that Rohingya refugees are here. We welcome them in 2012, 2016, 2017, but the treatment to the Rohingya refugees is not necessarily very good. Hate speech being over broadly exercised. Social media like Facebook and others not necessarily very careful about the hate speeches which have been used against the Rohingya refugees. We force them to relocate to a particular island that is, activists say, the Death Island. So Death Island, we move them. They have a prisoner situation. Their fundamental freedoms also being compromised as a human, which is not supposed to be according to our constitution and international treaty, which whatever we have subscribed so far. So Rohingya refugee, marginalized community, migrant workers who are returning from a number of countries, including from Korea and other Asian countries, Hong Kong. The migrant worker situation is not good. And we probably will face an economic recession very soon. And that's the given situation. I think with these short presentation, although I talked about around 17 minutes, but I think with this short presentation, probably you guys, your friends and my colleagues can relate what is the given situation we are in. And also what forms of resistance is there. Resistance not necessarily very organized, but it's fragmented, but some forms of resistances exist. And that is not necessarily very easy for the Bangladesh government to deal with. And they are quite disturbed with us, but not necessarily everything they can jump in at this stage. So I hope that next year will brought number of good issues for Bangladesh and also Asian region and also other region. So with this positive note, I would like to thank you everyone and thank you for organizing and giving me a chance to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rezar, for your presentation. I think the situation in Bangladesh underlined the need for greater regional support for HRDs as well as youths for them to operate in a restrictive areas, in restrictive areas such as Bangladesh. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for their presentation. Now that we have heard the 5 presentations from the 5 different countries, it's obvious that there is a very worrying situation in the region with regard to democracy and human rights. No, but I hope that with the way that the youth, as presented by our speakers, are resisting creatively and persevering, we hope that it will also mainstream conversations on how to support them and their clamor for democracy in the region. So with that, I would like to conclude the second session of this discussion, and I would like to hand over the stage to Ishal Supriyadi.
Hi. Nice to see you again. And I hope it's over 3 hours we've been together. Now we are a little bit past the times with the 34 participants still together with us. I guess the rest of today is just like a just to discuss little bits the deliberation of youth campaign selection focus on the regional and national levels and the way to carry forward a common youth advocacy agenda. The first page, because the second page will be on December 17th. And perhaps we can close today after we displaying the results. But after hearing so many information and story shared by the activists from different continents, it seems like we can pull the threads. If everything happens now in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, Pacific, even in Asia, and even if we listen carefully, the presentation from resource that's telling about Bangladesh situation, it seems like very bizarre. All the threats from democratic concerns, public participation, environment degradation, anti-corruption, even the extrajudicial killings, even the most concerning human right is happening. And then I think I was like moved a little bit with the ending part or conclusion of the sum of your talk today. I think that is giving us more encouragement to do. Then I can get a very clear lines that actually everybody expressing concerns and then looking support from each other and then expressing interests and the importance to build solidarity, not only within the country, but also across the countries as well. So without further ado, I think I would like to call Sue to presenting what we got today about the sharing poll results. It is here mentioning the most people coming here from Southeast Asia, of course. And then from the Southeast Asia, secondly from, of course, South Asia, and the third from Asia Pacific. I think that is well presenting, but I guess for the December 17 or second days, we wish to get more participants from Northeast Asia and Central Asia. Can I start with the second question? How concerned are you on the democratic challenges on the national level in your countries? I think everybody expressing serious concerns, majority up to 60%. So it's indicating the overall Asia Pacific is not in the good health, if I can put that way. And then question number 3. What kind of democratic challenges does your country face? I think the top 3 is expressing about defamation and criminalization of civic expressions through draconian law. Activists and social movement were arrested. I think this is putting the top list up to 37%, and then discrimination up to 23%, and lastly, access to information is infringed, disinformation and information. Number 4, are you involved in social movement and solidarity campaign? If yes, please describe on which level are you involved. I think mostly doing local or subnational and then national levels, and then only few that engage in international and the regional levels. I think we move to the next questions. Next, let's see. I think this is the most feasible to describe how actually we can crafting kind of like a inter-solidarity amongst the youths in Asian Pacific. Do you or your organization support any campaign? The answer is yes, majority 77%, and continue to what is needed to strengthen each of our causes, to amplify the concerns and strengthen solidarity. I think this is kind of multiple choice, but let's have a look the top 3 answer from you. 70% of the correspondents or the participant answer engagement, networking with other youths. I think this is absolute a key magic word today that we can extract it more by tomorrow. And then 53% of youths say they need capacity building. Obviously, as a youth, we should hungry or thirsty about the knowledge. And the last is space in the political process. And then mobilization space. It's quite clear. We can a little bit getting to know what actually becoming the hopes of the youths among these participants today. Maybe next. Oh, we only have 6 questioners. Okay, good. So among the 6 commissioners, I would like to highlight the needs of the youth to be networking and engaging. I think that is our supreme interventions by consolidating and organizing today events. So I think on December 17th, we will have more session to discuss about this, what kind of likely way or a next step to building a strong connections, what can be how do you call process that can be undertaken at the first place. And then on December 17th, we will start or on the session 3, we have the session on the solidarity buildings on the regional level through alliance. I think it's very critical for us to come to revisiting again and to learn and to share each other. There's only one session. It's going to be start around 3 o'clock Jakarta time or Bangkok times. I would like to welcome friends from the Pacific Islands also to join us. And we will invite, and with us here already confirms few regional or sub-regional alliance, which is first is from the Asian or Southeast Asia Youth Forum. And secondly, we have representative from the Milk Tea Alliance. Very interesting few months ago, there was a viral news and communications about the Milk Tea Alliance that they're supporting each other. I think is interesting to learn from them how they're running their solidarity. And then we also have a representative from Asia Dalit Right. I think Dalit Right is a minority and vulnerable groups who are millions of them, mostly in South Asia. I think they're very vulnerable, and I guess it's good to see how among Dalit they're tailoring and then try to working together. If you're talking about South Asia, India itself comprise 1.3 billion population plus the neighboring country. I think is quite interesting. And we got also representative from NOIDA or New Organization of Youth for Democratic in Asia. And then if you are joining with us, I think we are in the process of confirming to bring someone from the movements in Asia who is now in exiles. Perhaps you can hear more from them, and then we can put or at least laying foundations, understandings, and more knowledge in order to develop strategy or commitment together. I think since we ran out of the times, I would like to leave with that. And then finally, I would like to thank again all the speakers, audience who are still stay with us. And don't forget to come back and rejoin us on the third sessions of the Youth Assembly for Democratic Resilience in Asia and the Pacific, December 17th at 3 o'clock. In solidarity, and see you again. Over to you, and then this is closings of the day today. And again, stay safe, and then keep extending solidarity each other. Thank you.